Okay? And in this pratyahara, there are two terms which we should be aware of. One is prati, and the other is ahara. And we will take a look at this ahara first. Ahara actually, ahyade iti ahara, meaning what you feed on, what you consume, that is ahara. Okay? So, it doesn't mean just the food you take to eat for the physical body. It also means what you feed your eyes, what you feed your ears. So each indriya, each sense organ has got its own vishaya, its own object, or shall we say its own menu. Okay? So the eyes have its own menu. So perhaps it will say daily it wants to see TV, Facebook, cinema hall, a few things, and it likes to feed continuously from these things. Okay, your ears similarly will have its own spread. Music, favorite person to talk to on handphone, gossip, or can be, I mean, all of you want to hear sutras every day. So it depends on what you want to, what the ears want to feed on. Same goes with each sense organ. Each jnanendriya has got its own swa vishaya. Swa meaning its own, vishaya meaning object. We give our consciousness, we give our attention to these senses. And over the course of time, we reach a stage where the senses, which by itself are inert, which itself is not conscious, the eyes are not really conscious by itself, ears are not conscious by itself, but it is as though over the years of giving it our consciousness, they imbibe a little bit of sentiency. It is as though each of these senses have become alive and are like independent, very powerful entities. Each of these senses. Okay? And so much so that our consciousness, our buddhi, or however you want to say it, it lacks power now to control these indriyas. So despite the best intention not to do something today, I won't waste a lot of time in front of TV, or I won't be going into all these pages in the Facebook or something like that. But despite that, we might find ourselves doing just this, because our eyes do not even want to listen to what your buddhi is saying. They are powerful by themselves. And the consciousness kind of loses its own position, its own existence, because the indriyas are so strong. So this is the area where we talk about the tortoise, the kurma. Okay, so the kurma, the tortoise, whenever its existence is in a bit of a threat, it has the power to withdraw everything. And our consciousness itself loses its independent pure state, and it seems like consciousness is just this, a mass of changing images and sounds and desires and all of that. It loses its independent, pure position. Okay, so this is where the practice is so important. How can we realize the swarupa of chitta? That is where pratyahara, the effort, comes in. And withdrawing from the senses, pratyahara, have to be seen in two contexts. One is in the context of samadhi. So pratyahara in the context of concentrative absorption is one thing. We will talk about it now. So this is like you're sitting for a practice and you want to get into a concentrative absorption. Then pratyahara is really that stage you will have to pass through where by virtue of your concentration on the breath or on the nadis or whatever is your chosen focus point, by virtue of that, slowly the sensory inputs start to reduce, okay, into your consciousness, because you're so concentrating on the breath, your sensory inputs from other senses are not coming in so much. You might experience this when you're absorbed in your favorite TV program. Okay, Every day that's happening. I mean, sometimes then we won't hear other people talking. So that is also a pratyahara. But this one won't give us wisdom or anything. Okay. Instead, the indriyas get even more stronger. You know, your attachment to that TV program or anything will get even more stronger. So we have to connect to this capacity while doing our concentrative absorption practice. Okay. So that is basically just really again and again putting your focus on your chosen object by repeatedly, you know, nairantarya, you know, all those aspects of practice when you apply, eventually this stream of sensory impulses into our focusing field will reduce. Neurologically, we have something called reticular nucleus, and that kind of blocks the sensory impulses from being transmitted up. You know, it needs the support of thalamic nuclei, and all those things kind of then eventually support and inhibits sensory inputs from reaching your conscious attention. Okay, so that is the time when we say we are going a bit absorbed now. Suddenly, it's like everybody else has gone quiet. It is just that our attention and consciousness, which was going out into hearing, seeing, is now starting to draw back. And inputs from there is no more reaching. The sensory inputs are no more reaching our field of attention. So this is pratyahara in the context of concentrative absorption. Okay. Now, that is one aspect. There is another practice which is open awareness. Okay, so that is our day-to-day life. Okay, we are not sitting or anything, we are moving about. There also we want pratyahara. How will we practice pratyahara? How can we view pratyahara when we are moving about our daily activities? If we say pratyahara is withdrawing the senses from sensory objects, withdrawing our consciousness from the senses, that will be a little bit tricky. Because then I can't see any of you. I can't hear any of you. And then to move about will be very tricky. So in the context of open awareness, it is not so much of withdrawing the power of the senses. It is actually stopping the feeding of your senses with your fancies. That is all. Okay? The senses will operate. The eyes pick up an image. It is the feeding of a fancy into that image which becomes a strong distraction. It is the feeding of our fancies which is the main problem, by which we don't really see, hear or anything. We are all in moha, in some kind of infatuation, and that is mainly not the fault of the indriyas itself. Indriyas are like reporters. They just report. But it is the story making is this mind. And that is where the fancies are added. And then we are entrapped. We can say we are enchanted, we are entrapped, and our whole idea of happiness resolves around the unfoldment of these fanciful desires. Okay, so fancy is one thing, that is superimposing certain ideas into something. So we see somebody and we perhaps like the look of that personality, and they fit the idea of a decent person in our kind of idea. Then we superimpose these qualities on that person completely. And then we see this person as a completely decent person. Or there is a certain attraction, and then we completely, this is the person. But that can be something else. We superimpose so much and fancies. So pratyahara practice in the flow of life is trying to reduce this imposing of fancies on sensory impressions. So this is, then it starts to move towards karma yoga itself. Karma yoga, the other day we discussed, it is about, what is it about? It's about pashyan, srinvan, sprishan, jigran, ashnan, gachan. There are many things. It just means you see, you hear, you touch, you grasp. It's just like that. But normally, we are not just seeing, we are tainting the seeing. We are superimposing many things on the seeing, and then we don't see the object for the object. We see the fancy as the object. So yesterday, Susan asked me a doubt. What is the difference between detachment and withdrawal? What is the difference between vairagya and pratyahara? Okay. detachment is a state where you are free of any clinging due to wisdom. So wisdom is there in your consciousness, by virtue of which you do not get caught up in a fancy. Because you can recognize fancy for fancy, that is mind playing tricks, and you can recognize the object as an object. For Vairagya, the wisdom has strongly been imposed. We say sthita prajna. A prajna, wisdom is very stable. Such a personality is free. And that example is of a lotus. Okay, lotus. So lotus is an example of karma being conducted by a very wise personality, by a very wise person. So the way she does the karma is completely based on Brahman, meaning based on just pure consciousness, based on pure wisdom. And when he or she does the karma that way, nasalipyade papena, they are never tainted by any kind of karma or clinging or aversion. Nothing clings on to them. Just like Padma Patram Iva Ambasa, like Padma means lotus, Patra means leaf, Iva Ambasa means waters, like a lotus leaf on the waters. The lotus leaf doesn't have to do anything to clear the water. It is automatic. The leaf has got something there by which, though it's on top of the water never really wets it. There is some kind of property of the leaf by which it is always clean. Now, pratyahara is a conscious effort, and the example is of a tortoise. So tortoise is not automatic. When it feels that its existence is in threat, then it withdraws. But that skill it has. So similarly, when we are engaging in many kind of pleasures or in our life, when we start to feel that a craving, a desiring is forming, that is the time we know that beautiful fancies are being weaved around these objects, and that is the time to kind of withdraw attention. So that example is of a tortoise. And again, this is not simple. This is yatna, but the scriptures that themselves say that the yatadaha meaning the one who puts in yatna, they also have a fall. Okay, they also due to the indriyas, due to the power of the indriyas, due to the power of the sense organs, they also can get into pramadini. Pramadini meaning they also can fall for these fanciful ideas. Okay, and then they can have a fall, which is called haranti prasabam manaha. Haranti meaning falls. Prasabam meaning by forcefully. Manaha, the mind falls as though forcefully. So just because others consider you or considers us as great yoga practitioners doesn't mean we are completely safe yet. We are not the lotus level yet. We have to practice the tortoise much more until we can come to that spontaneous freedom. So that is all withdrawal practice. Okay, pratyahara. Now, is there anything that you would like to ask me? Prati, good. Prati means opposite. So ahara is the food. So normally the flow is the vishaya, the objects kind of calls your senses into that. We look around. Advertisements are like that. It's just calling your attention towards that. Prati meaning you're moving in an opposite direction. Okay, you're withdrawing the senses from this kind of tempting sensory object. You're withdrawing it, and then you're withdrawing that towards your consciousness. Rather than consciousness moving into senses, moving into sense objects, the reverse way. From sense objects, the senses pull back, and from senses, your consciousness pulls back. So it's a return path. And this is the meaning of retreat. Yoga retreat is a pratyahara practice. It's a retreat. You're drawing back. And your mind is not going to like it. Because we are not providing the indriyas the same comforts. Okay, the skin doesn't like perhaps a rough bed. And it doesn't like the cold water perhaps. And it doesn't like the discipline at all.